So, willkommen zurück. Weiter geht's hier auf Stage 2.
Welcome back to Stage 2. And as I told you about 15 minutes ago, oh well, here comes the English text. So most children's books, as all parents know, are centuries old, and so are the values inscribed in them. So we need a lot of change here. But how does one force a change like that without making the stories boring, and how do you conserve the fun for kids? And for this, please welcome Suse Bauer and Raúl Aguayo-Krauthausen on stage. Thank you so much for coming out. Unfortunately, I can't quite see you from the stage. We would like to introduce ourselves. I'm an actress and I'm campaigning for inclusion of people with Down syndrome. I'm Raúl Krauthausen. I'm also inclusion activist, author, and campaigner for Sozialhelden. I'm Suse Bauer, an editor and single parent of 2 kids. So why do we want to talk about children's books today at Republica? Because children's books are really important. Children's books are political, and they form the views of children, which is why children's books will help decide how tolerant our world of tomorrow will be. Children's books can change the world. In our very diverse world, we want children's books which reflect this diversity. In the course of our research, we found that this diversity is hardly present at all in children's books so far, and this is something we need to talk about. Each one of us sitting here is an expert in their field. Everyone has their gender they identify with or not. Each, or at least some of us, have experienced discrimination based on gender, based on disability or race. And that means that each of us is an expert on their own field and can decide whether the children's books we have today are sufficient or we need change and where it needs to happen. When I look back to my childhood, then of course I remember enjoying children's books, but I also remember a feeling of distance because I could not identify with the protagonists. So it felt more like a fairy tale to me. And when my parents gave me books that talked about a disability, then of course I noticed that my parents had a motive beyond just giving me a story in that. And so I remember a book being called Peter is the Tiniest of the Giants, which my parents loved, and I hated it because the book focused on the problems and the special looks you got as a disabled person. And I very much felt ashamed for the representation of the boy in the book. I didn't want to be the stereotypical boy who gets bullied and made fun of all the time, even if he is the hero of the story in the end. So I felt like I was looking into a mirror in a bad way. And looking back at my childhood today, I think I was missing one thing, which is a boy or a girl with a disability experiencing an adventure which is completely independent of their disability. That was something I was missing very much. As I told you before, I'm a parent of two, and everyone who has or knows children are incredibly curious. How is it that space seems infinite? How is it that plants always grow upwards? But I always notice, talking to my kids, that children do not question lifestyles and life decisions so much. Children don't often ask why their friends live in different conditions. For example, a good friend of my son has two mothers, but my son did not come to me asking why there were two mothers instead of a father and a mother like at home in the past. Well, most children's books which actually talk about different life forms, life decisions, end up explaining the reasons behind those different concepts of life, as if there was something that had to be explained or excused. Which is why we now want to talk about children's books in which different styles of life are just there. I've known Alina for a long time, and she's been on my TV show Krauthausen TV, and we would very much like you to read the story you wrote to us. It's called Rike Doesn't Want to Be Alone Anymore.
Also die Geschichte heißt, Rike mag nicht mehr alleine sein. Rike ist 5 Jahre alt und wohnt mit ihrer
Rike is 5 years old and
Stadt am Schwarzwald.
lives in a little town in the Black Forest with her parents.
Einen Kindergarten.
There are some shops in the road and a kindergarten as well. Her parents' house is rather large,
Und ein Bäckereigeschäft.
and there's a bakery on the base level.
Und hinter dem Haus ist ein großer Garten.
Above those
Wenn die Mutter
is
Rike morgens
their apartment, and there's a big garden in the back.
beim Frühstück sagt die Mutter immer, Rike, schnell, beeile dich. Du musst
Her mother
in den
always tells Rike to hurry up because she has to go to kindergarten
Eigentlich
early in the morning, and the mother
noch mit der Mutter plaudern,
has to go to work.
aber da ruft
The girl would very much like to talk to her mother for a longer time, but the bus driver hits the horn and Rike has to hurry up. All the kids in the neighborhood go to the kindergarten at the end of the road, but Rike goes to a special kindergarten at the edge of town every morning because she has Down syndrome and her parents want the best for her. They want Rike to get her special needs cared for, the same as the two kids in a wheelchair, and the one boy who's always so excited starts flailing his arms and attacking people. The kindergartners are very concerned for her, but she doesn't quite feel well in that place. Come noon, Rike goes home by bus, and her mother is waiting for her with lunch.
Father's asleep because he has to work in the bakery. Rike and her mother are talking about her day, but her mother doesn't have much time, and Rike should go out and play in the garden. She sits down on the swings and sings a song, but she wants to play with the neighbors' children and wants to play with them. And she calls out, "Hi, may I play with you?" But nobody wants her. The children call back, "You are not our friend. You're stupid and disabled, and we don't want you." Now Rike is very sad. But the other children who are laughing at her, she goes back into the bakery to her mother and asks if she may help. But the mother has no time. She has to care for the customers. Rike gets a pretzel and has to look if her father is working in the bakery. He's happy to see him. He's baking bread and cake, and Rike is watching him work. She would like to help, but she's too little. Her father always says, Rike, watch out, the oven is hot. Rather go out and play in the garden. But Rike doesn't want that. She goes to the basement and apartment and hides in her room. She hears 2 stories on her CDs and listens to the stories and sings with the songs. This is fun to her, and she doesn't think about how she doesn't have as many friends anymore and that the other kids don't like her. Sometimes she goes out and drives around with her tricycle on the yard, but the other children are laughing at her again. You're a little child, they call out. You can't even drive a bike. That's why Rike is already waiting for the evening, because the parents have time for her after dinner. And that's the nicest time for Rike, because this is when they can play together and make music with each other. But there's not much time before she has to go to bed. And she often thinks, well, how nice would it be to have a sister or a friend? As she comes back from kindergarten for one time, there is a giant truck in the street. Big guys are carrying furniture around to the house across the street. After eating, Rike runs out again, curious about what's going on the other side of the street. Suddenly, a boy comes forth from the truck and waves at Rike. She can't believe it and waves back. She runs up to her and says, "Hi, I'm Max. We are living here now as well. Do you want to play with us?" Rike is very happy to have someone to play with. Max is 5 years old as well. Both play each afternoon with each other and are really big friends. Max's parents are very nice as well. They want to meet Rike's parents. Sometimes they talk with each other or have a barbecue. The mother of Max has a lot more time than Rike's parents. She just works half day in the supermarket. In the afternoon she does a lot with Max and takes Rike with her. Sometimes they go to the zoo, to the cinema, to swimming on the playground, or just go out. Before Max is registered at the kindergarten at the end of the street, their parents are talking with each other. They say, it would be very nice if Rike and Max could go into the kindergarten together, because they are such good friends. Und so gehen Max's and Rike's parents are marching together with them to the kindergarten and register them. It works. Both get a place in the same group. Now Rike just has to deregister at the special kindergarten. Rike brings a giant cake for all children in the kindergarten and shares it there. All children are happy and nobody thinks Rike is stupid. Now Rike and Max go to the kindergarten every day. Rike likes it far more than the other kindergarten. In the afternoon, Max and Rike are playing together in the garden. Rike likes to play hide and seek. As she hides in the bushes, she hears a tiny meow and sees a little black cat. Fast, she calls Max, and they get out the little kitten from the bushes. It's so small, they say, as they get it to Max's mother. They're going to the to the vet. And of course, Max and Rike want to keep the little child. Rike's parents have to think about it for a bit, but then she can keep the little Minka. And at once the neighbor kids are standing at the garden door and looking at Rike and Max as they're feeding the little kitten with the bottle and seeing them play. They say, "Hello, Rike and Max, may we play with your kitten as well?" Rike and Max open the door and all the children play together. Before the others go away, back home, they say, "Well, actually you're pretty nice, Rike, and it's nice to play with you. Maybe come back tomorrow. If you want, you can visit us as well." Now Rike is not alone anymore.
Das war super. Carina, kannst du uns auch noch ein bisschen was erzählen?
Carina, can you tell us a little more about your experiences with children's books, your ideas, what you like about them? Yes, I can do that. I like children very much, I love them, and I've worked with children. The thing I like is that they don't hold prejudices, they're very open to new experiences. And I like Astrid Lindgren's stories very much, and I always wanted to be Pippi. What's your favorite book? My favorite book is Albin Jonathan, which is shown on the slide here, because I like the pictures very much, the way the boy is described, how independent he is, and I like it very much. Because I could be cuddled with, I could be loved, of course. This was the way that my family was treating me. Thank you. In the course of our research, we tried to get an overview of the children's books market, and we noticed, as everyone knows who gifts children's books or is a parent, that there is an incredible number of children's books, many of them very well drawn and with good stories, but lacking diversity. There are no people in a wheelchair, no one with a hearing aid, and usually there are no people of color or diverse families in there. We focused our research on the topic of disability. Two aspects in particular. The first is topic-oriented books, meaning books about disability, and for the second, children's books in general, to see whether disability was a factor in them. We noticed that the very fewest books were written by experts, meaning people with disabilities themselves. Most books were written by therapists, family, or authors interested in the topic. This is still a work in progress, and looking at the individual disabilities, we're looking at sensory disabilities, noticing that there are barely any books about vision-impaired children. The reason being that producing them is very, very hard and hardly an economical choice. An author who has written books for blind children points out that the small selection of books for vision-impaired children makes them less likely to get to know books, to appreciate reading. And here's an example called Bear Hunt. with some photos. It is, of course, in braille writing. And there is a storyline which you can actually feel. And to each episode there are elements depicted in the book which you can actually feel with your fingers. Also, there are barely any books about hearing impaired children. Children depicted in the books rarely have a hearing aid or cochlear implant. So what we're showing here is a book in sign language, which introduces children, able-bodied children as well, to the topic, which has been written by a native speaker of the sign language. And the other one is a children's book on sign language. There is an online project which translates fairy tales to sign language, and you can find the link on our homepage. On the topic of Down syndrome, it is worth noting that there are barely any books written by people living with Down syndrome themselves, and those books rarely address children living with Down syndrome themselves, but they are more aimed to explain people living with Down syndrome to others, in which they are painted in a light that does not put the common things first, but is more focused on differences and things that might be lacking. Now, I would like to point out that people with disabilities, people with Down syndrome, are a part of a community, and that's very important. It's the same thing concerning people with physical disabilities, in which a protagonist with using a wheelchair is often dependent on the help of able-bodied people. There are positive examples like Josephine the Bear and Pia, or an example from a very famous children's book series, Nulli and Prisemut. We have them on display, so get a look after the talk. Talking about diversity, it is unfortunately often the case that stories do not focus on common properties, but exhibit what is called othering, meaning that often people with disabilities don't fit in, but get together with other people sharing the same disability to be happy ever after. But this is not really what inclusion looks like. And the other aspect we're talking about are books not focused on disability, but just regular children's books. And we were looking for diversity in them. And unfortunately, we did not find much diversity in this at all, even though it would have been easy to integrate there. Then surprisingly, in an English textbook of my daughter, we found a lot of good examples. For example, a main character, Carla, sitting in a wheelchair. There are single parents, people of color, and all of this is not explained in a special way, but just shown as natural as the state things are, and this is what we're hoping for. The question we have been asking ourselves all this time is, how do we get to the point to discover good works? So say you go into a bookshop and are looking for literature that exhibits diversity, or on the other hand, how do you create such works? The most known test to check a book for diversity is, of course, the Bechdel test, about which I will talk later. But the most important thing is how much did the author really care about a good depiction of diversity? How much was it really their motivation and not just a role to play or one more thing to exhibit? There is this joke going about between actors, if you want to win an award, play a disabled person. But a much more decisive question in judging works is the author really an expert of their own situation? And the thing they write about, like Carina Kühne here on stage, is in the story she writes. So let's get back to the Bechtel test. Here's author Alison Bechtel, who developed this test in her book. And she first popularized this test, which asks 3 questions to a work of art. It's mostly used on films. Those 3 questions are: first, are there at least 2 named female roles? Question 2, do they talk to one another? And the last question is, do they talk about something else than a man? Which sounds rather basic, but among the 6 most recent Oscar winners, 4 failed the Bechtel test. And based on that, there are, of course, tests for a lot of other so-called minorities. For example, the Vito Russo test. Vito Russo was filmmaker and author and co-founder of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation in the Media. And you could say he's someone coming from the LGBT movement, and he asks quite similar questions of works of art, saying that there needs to be at least one LGBT character. That character does not have to be primarily or only defined by their sexual orientation or gender identity, and this character needs to be integrated into the storyline in such a way that the removal would mean a grave effect on the storyline itself. So it's not just the funny neighbor, but it needs to be an important character. Based on the Bechtel test as well, there is the Shukla test, asking, are there... Let's just talk about Nika Shukla, who is a book author and TV author, asking, are there at least 2 named people of color in the story? Do they talk to one another? And do they talk about something else than white people and their problems?
But because we are looking at it from the perspective of this disabled persons, thematic of this, did we come upon the Tyrion Lannister test? Tyrion Lannister, of course, we know him from Game of Thrones. And here the test says that at least one role should have a person with disability who gets the story towards even without disability. Meaning, is it just a person at the fringe, or is it a main character? Is it a hero with disability, or are they constantly shown as something different, sick or ugly? How does the character get forward by being disabled or doing other things not linked to disability? And how is disability shown? Is it shown to show sympathy or Paralympic glorification, like in Daredevil? Does the person get shown as a mature person or as a child? And what does the character see themselves as? Sick, disabled, or do they have a positive self-worth? And the question is, how does the person act in this work? Are they passive or are they active as well? So do they just take all the time, or are they giving people without disabilities? So are things done even though they are disabled, or even if they are disabled, or does it end with some healing or the death? And this is also very complicated, but these three questions are not that hard. And the most fun, which is the tip I want to give you, the most fun is it to do this together with children. If you ask these questions, do you have the feeling this person is the main character? Would it be something else if they didn't have a disability, or if they were a girl? And you see that children have a whole another view on justice and see the core of the problem quite fast, mostly faster than parents who may think a bit too much about it. So what do we want? So we say first, while doing research, that of course we don't want more diversity in children's books, and because of that we are putting together tests, not just for disability but for all or most of diverse themes, and give this to lectorates and publishers, and that was it. We have a website where you can find some of our information already. It was a bit shortly that we had a whole hour, because we thought about 5 minutes lightning talk, and now we know we have a whole hour, which is pretty fine. And this is why we took Carina with us, who helped us a lot. What I wanted to say with Alvin Jonathan is that in this book it's nice that children get explained what the Down syndrome is, and I like this. We brought diverse books with us, which I didn't think about in the whole time was my favorite book, which is My Three Best Friends and Zulai, which is an American book about a blind girl in an inclusive school who likes to run at the youth games with her pink shoes. And what I liked most about it was one sentence that said she hates it when she gets put in front of her class, especially, for example, everyone does this and this, and Zulai has to do this, and she doesn't like that. Thank you. Now we have the possibility to answer questions. I don't know how much time we have. And I want to say that on this website we have here, there's the possibility to give your ideas, write down what you dislike about children's books. Maybe you have a story you want to write, and we found a few publishers and talked to them, and they had big interest. We even got interviewed by the Northern German radio. And yeah, now questions, if you want to. Questions, opinions, tomatoes, critique. No tomatoes. I want to ask, did you look at psychic disabilities, how they are shown?
Yes, we did look at those, but we did not prioritize it because it is such an expensive topic and, well, it looks just the same as with physical disabilities. There are some really good children's books on this topic, but they are often not written by experts, but by therapists who try to put themselves in the place of the experts.
Oh, that's the point, because I'm disabled myself and I want to
Wie war nochmal die Frage, bitte?
get out a children's book.
Betroffen bin und gleichzeitig auch mit dem Verlag gerade dran bin, auch ein Buch in der Richtung rauszubringen. Also ich meine,
That's great.
ich freue mich, dass es
So yeah, I'm happy it is getting looked at, but it will take some time before it works. Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure, let's network.
Wie war das denn bei dir? Hast du Kinderbücher damals gehabt?
Was it with you? Did you have children's books, or did you meet some? Not with about this, none at all. But well, I wasn't aware of it then. It was just later. Was ich auch gerne sagen möchte, what I want to say is it's very sad that most with Down syndrome or disabilities that the focus is always on the deficits and not focused on what people can do, and it's just disabled people or people with Down syndrome are stupid, and that's it. And not these people can do something. I think that's better. Not saying, yeah, these guys, they're disabled, they can't do this. I think we should look at what they can do and not what they can't do. And that's a bit sad that it's seen like this. For example, in Benjamin Blümchen and Bibi Blocksberg, there is Elea Iluanda, and there are only 9 episodes or something, and she sits in a wheelchair, and she is a bit mischievous, but there's always this owl that is supposed to console her, and this is the owl that always catches all the negative thoughts if she's sad. And on the one hand, the character is interesting, but on the other hand, what the fuck is a consolation owl? And I want to ask, why does the disabled person have a need of a sidekick and not just do it the same like other characters without gender aspects? In Benjamin Blümchen, the decision makers are all men, and the women are, well, service people, which is also to be looked at critically. What I would really wish for in many books would be looking at the similarities between people, and I would like this so much. I would think that would be great, that there really is similarities between humans. Carina's story, we put on our website as well, and linked to her blog as well, where she has more stories. Yeah. Who wants to look at it? Look at it at www.karinakühne.de. Sorry, I didn't really get this. More questions? Hi, I have a question. Why does the author have to be an expert in these things? I think it's the biggest thing of an author to think in different thematics. I don't really have to know how to be disabled, but doesn't it have to be enough to have knowledge about it and write about it after this?
Das wäre sicherlich wünschenswert.
Well, that would be desirable, of course, at one point, but I'm afraid that this is a bit like
Ja, also die Autoren in dem Punkt sich oft dann eher
well, on this count, the authors
ausdenken, anstatt wirklich zu recherchieren.
make things up rather than actually doing research. We see this very much in regard to films,
Befragt, beziehungsweise wenn man die Filme anguckt,
because if you
wie sie Behinderung inszenieren, dann ist es zum Beispiel ganz
interview directors of movies
blinde Menschen
and ask how they
in Liebesszenen, wo sich im Gesicht
write disabled roles, especially blind people, in a love scene, then you always see people
wie sich das Gesicht anfühlt für den,
touching each other's faces very much. If you actually ask a blind person, and they will tell you that they do not care about how the face of the other person really
Best Friends and Zulai
feels like.
selber gar nicht sehbehindert ist, beziehungsweise
Well, the author of my new favorite book, My Three Best Friends in Zulai,
mit dem Thema auseinandergesetzt,
is not blind herself. She did the research
dass die besseren
and
am meisten von selbst betroffen
went right in there, but we found that the better books were very often written by experts themselves, because everything feels very much forced very often.
Hat es jemand anders erlebt?
And we can ask back into the audience, has someone made different experiences? Are we at a point where a man can write a gender-sensitive and fair balanced book?
Well, how is it if I look at a film like My Left Foot, where the regisseur who doesn't sit in a wheelchair and the main actor doesn't have a disability as well, but he had this protagonist who can only use his left foot. But how can it happen that this got shown so well that they got an Oscar?
Unter Schauspielstudenten den Witz gibt, wenn sie einen Preis gewinnen.
Yes, but well, that's an example of what I said before, that there is this joke among acting students
Wie authentisch das war,
that you need to play a disabled person to get an award.
ich kenne das ähnlich, wenn ich Rollstuhlfahrende Menschen sehe, die sitzen
well,
dann im Film oft in falschen Rollstühlen, die überhaupt nicht angepasst sind.
I recognize this
Und dann hat doch ihr Bein
when I see people in wheelchairs in movies who are using the wrong kind of wheelchair, who do twitch after all.
und vor allem
And I don't want to be overcritical of this, but there is often a wrongful representation of this. And there's one more thing, and that is that able-bodied actors take the work away from disabled actors who are out there.
das ist ja so, wie in den 70ern man Blackfacing gemacht hat.
This is a bit like blackfacing back in the 70s when white people were just painted black because it was thought that black people could not be good actors. And I think I can add one more thing here in regard to black people. Martin Luther King wished for a world in which people would not be judged for their race, but just for the human being they were. And this is a thing I very much like. And I also wish for a world in which people with Down syndrome are much more represented in films.
Also zum Beispiel ist, dass man da jetzt zum Beispiel jetzt als Rollstuhlfahrer oder so oder als Blinder einfach da durchgehen kann,
So,
als Komparse da durchlaufen. Also sowas könnte
why can't there just be blind people or wheelchair users as extras in scenes?
I can stand up as well. Like you say, it's a question of representation, especially in films. Who does play the queer roles? Who plays disabled roles? You talked about blackfacing. Who plays people of color? This should be people who really can display it, and in the same way, it should be with authors who writes books, who writes films, how many blockbuster films are written by women, queer people, disabled people. And I think this is not just how realistic it is, but also how much right do people have to tell their own stories, and this is mostly not the case. But on the internet, and there's a great possibility where you can just do things on your own without redaction or stuff, where you can just put out your own stories via YouTube or blogs, where people can tell their own stories, and this is how we stumbled upon Carina Kühne. That's true. Ich kann noch sagen, what I want to say before you all go away. What always makes me angry is this in the internet, Down syndrome this is a sickness which is not true. It isn't. This is just putting down people with chromosomal abnormality. Hello, I'm Andrea Meyer. I write about that my wife and me, have children, and our children have a lot to see with children books, and in the English space there are a lot of diverse books, but this is not in Germany. And I would like to have from the big publishers in Germany who get out a lot of books each year. I don't see why not. And the other problem is, apart from that, I want to say that people who have the experience with different models of life, to have experts. I still would like, for my children, for example, that there is a Pixie series. I don't want to read Connie to my children every evening. I hate that. And not just because of the parents, but because Connie is so damn normal that this was never my world. I want diverse Pixie books. We would like to add to this that it would be nice if Pixie would get out these books, but not as its own series, but just included in everything else they do. Because the interesting thing is, which we saw with our research and with my work before that, the people who have the biggest problem with diversity are the parents, not the children. By Astrid Lindgren, I liked Madita in the film, and I liked that, and it's nice to have something like this. Want to know more about Carina Kühne? She played in Be My Baby, a TV movie. Yeah, I played a big role, 100 minutes, and yeah, this was fun. And with the next, I can already tell you, I play with In All Friendship, which is a doctor's series, which will be seen at the 21st June at 9 o'clock at the first television channel. I can't say much about it, except, I didn't get that, sorry.
And as I said, I very much enjoyed shooting that. And I am looking for more acting offers I have an
Bin ich ja mal gespannt, wie es
agency,
weitergeht und ob ich noch
Kreuzer,
ein paar mehr Filmangebote bekomme.
and
Würde mich natürlich
I
freuen.
am hoping for more
Und
offers.
wie gesagt, ich habe auch noch jetzt wieder ein
I would
Filmangebot
like
bekommen.
that.
Und zwar von Henkel von Donnersmarck. Florian Henkel von
I also
Donnersmarck.
got an offer from
Und da
Florian
habe ich
Henkel
auch
von
wieder, wo ich da
Donnersmarck,
eine Rolle bekommen habe. Und das Einzige, was ich dazu sagen kann,
and
dass das
the only
die
thing
Zeit geht und da soll ich
I
halt dann auch
can
wieder
tell
machen.
about that role is that
Und mehr kann ich
the
sonst
film
dazu
was
nicht
set
sagen.
in the Nazi times and they wanted me along.
Noch Fragen?
Any more questions?
Hallo, mein Name ist Anne Matuszek. Ich
Hello, I'm Anne Matuszek. I'm a single parent,
kurz den Hinweis loswerden wollen, auch wenn es
and I would like to say
Beispiel
that
genannt wurde. Ich habe eine ganz andere Erfahrung mit Schulbüchern gemacht.
even if you had a positive example of textbooks in school,
Sehr, sehr
I've made very different experiences. Because the textbooks we have at home,
anders als andere Familien bei uns mit der Einstellung aufgetreten ist. Und dass mein Sohn das selber wahnsinnig merkwürdig findet, weil das
the entire topic of differences between the own family and that of others
wird es bei anderen
came up when my kid got into school.
Nur das ist natürlich auch was, da reden wir
And
nicht nur
this
über freie
is
Wirtschaft,
plays
da kann ich auch einfach
plays a big part for us, maybe less of a part for others. But we're not just talking about free market here,
wie wenig das gemacht wird und wie viel
because
Sensibilität einfach in dem
the
Bereich.
authorities can change what is in textbooks, and I'm shocked by how little interest is paid to that. I can only confirm that because I'm a single parent myself, and it was quite a surprise for me when my daughter approached me with this textbook, which featured, among others, a single parent.
Ein Rollstuhlfahrendes Mädchen ist, eine alleinerziehende Mutter und so weiter, wurde in der Klasse auch übrigens nie thematisiert und die Kinder fanden das alles ganz normal.
And
So geht es, so kann es auch
the
sein,
appearance
so sollte es
of a single mother, of a wheelchair-using person,
Also,
and others never came up as a topic
das ist, glaube ich, auch ein englischer
in class. The children just took it as it was.
Wort Wheelchair kommt im Vokabular am Ende gar nicht vor.
Kann aber sein, dass es in der vorherigen Ausgabe, es ist ja schon irgendwie für die 4. Klasse, also deshalb.
Und was ich irgendwie gerne auch noch sagen möchte, wie das
One more thing I would like to
war
add
bei mir so in der Klasse, da
about
waren
English
auch
in
so
my
ein bisschen
class
irgendwie so Bedenken gewesen, wie das
is that there were
Da wurde
concerns
mir
in my
auch
class
gesagt, Englisch könnte ich nicht mitmachen, da würde ich mit meinem Sonderpädagogen in der Ecke sitzen.
because
Aber
people thought that I would not
irgendwo,
be able to participate in English classes because I would be sitting in the corner, not understanding a thing, with my special needs assistant. But it turns out that I really enjoyed English. It was one of my favorite subjects, and I finished top of my class in English.
So war das, dass ich dann halt, dass gesagt wurde, Englisch durfte ich nicht mitmachen, würde da mit meinem Sonderpädagogen in der Ecke sitzen. Aber bin froh, dass ich dann Klassenbeste war in der einzigen Einheit.
And I'm happy I came out on top of my class after I was told I would not be smart enough, I would not be able to even participate.
Es immer noch gibt, dass Menschen mit Behinderung mit Down-Syndrom einfach einem das nicht zutrauen. Obwohl sie eigentlich
And
viel
there
mehr
is still
machen
this terrible stereotype which leads to
Zwangsverweisung in die Sonderschule
a lack of trust in the abilities of people with Down syndrome.
Und dann irgendwann habe ich ja dann die 4. Klasse wiederholt. Und dann nachher habe ich es
I had to
irgendwann
repeat
geschafft, den
fourth
ganz
grade,
normalen Hauptschulabschluss zu machen. Nur
but in the end,
Unterstützung
I
Da
got
konnte ich mir das dann wenigstens dann durchziehen. Dass ich
I
auch die
finished
erste
school
Mal
in the regular way with solid B grade.
Noch Fragen oder
Any more
wollen wir uns
questions?
die Bücher angucken? Wir haben ein paar mitgebracht
Or maybe you want to have a look at the books we brought?
zum Anfassen.
Hallo, Silvia Engelmeier, ich bin aus Wien. Was mir negativ
I'm Svenja Engelmeier from Vienna,
in Deutschland viel mehr als in Österreich,
and there's
Experten spricht, sondern
one thing I didn't
Expertinnen. Also gerade bei so einem Thema
like,
finde ich das
which is that you were using the gendered and male form of experts in your talk, but we were trying to use it, the answer, in the neutral plural form. Thanks for the Thanks for speaking up anyway. So, we have 2 or 3 minutes left for one more question. Here comes.
Wurde jetzt gerade gesagt, dass gerade das Down-Syndrom, dass das jetzt eigentlich nicht in einem Buch so explizit thematisiert werden sollte, sondern so die Handlung mit begleiten.
You just said that Down syndrome should not be a very important point in a story, but just occurs incidental.
Das haben wir ganz bewusst hier mal rangeworfen, weil wir
Well, it can go either way.
Ja, genau.
And we included this one book, Trinchen Mongolinchen, just to see if it would get a reaction from you, crowd. And we were actually surprised to still get our hands on that book. And the title obviously is discriminatory, and we don't need to talk about that. Well, we don't want to say that disability should not be a topic for children's books at all. Because you need peer counseling books, you need books in which you can identify with the protagonists. But what we are looking for, what we are striving for, is diversity in mainstream books which are not focused on disabled people. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you so much for joining us. Give it up for our speakers.
Und wir machen jetzt hier, wie das hier auch schon... Wolltest du noch was sagen?
I would like to finish with a quote, which I like very much. It's by former President Richard von Weizsäcker, who says, "It's normal to be different." Thank you.
Wir machen jetzt wie bekannt nur eine ganz, ganz kleine Pause, obwohl 15 Minuten werden.
Translation, you have been listening to Siri
aus China.
And Johannes, thank you.
We're translating more talks. I think it's only the English on stage 1 and 2 right now, but if you want to listen in, there are headphones at the entrances, I think. Yeah, thank you for listening.